Hey, friends, welcome to the Gardener's Workshop live on YouTube. I really appreciate you guys choosing to join with me here today. And I just appreciate you visiting my channel here. So today is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit of storytelling along with um, why I soil block, as well as the benefits that I have learned to kind of do that. And I've made myself some notes here because I have a lot. I don't want to leave out anything. It's really been a long time since I've kind of done this about talking about actually the benefits and why is it that soil blocking helped me so much. So if you are interested in more like how to do it, that's not what we're going to be talking about today so much. It's not the hands-on to do it, but you can just look back a couple of episodes ago here on YouTube to the episode that the title is Seed Starting, Stock, Godicia, and Billy Balls. That's just one you can have a quick look here on YouTube, but you can always visit my channel, my website, thegardenersworkshop.com, and we just have tons of resources there. There's lots of tutorials. You can go to the resources and then go to all things soil blocking. And then there's a video guide also that has lots on soil blocking. But I also have an online, on-demand, short seed starting course. It's only about 90 minutes long, and it takes you from the beginning to the end of starting with soil blocking and taking them to the garden, as well as there's a section on planting seeds in the garden. So that's where you can learn more about actually how to do this. So I'm just really pleased to be inside because it's really nippy outside this morning. I'm in southeastern Virginia, classic temperatures. We were in the mid 60s, beautiful this week, and we're back down to the low 20s. So my cool flower covers are up. They're snuggled down outside in the garden, and I am happy to be inside talking to you about easy indoor seed starting with soil blocking. So I want to, kind of come out of the gate by saying that while I do soil block most of the time, I still do use plug trays when it makes sense. Something that if you're new to me, I'm not really a purist about anything. I tend to go with whatever seems to be the easiest, the most effective, the most cost effective, and the whatever gets the job done for what I'm doing. Because I'm a commercial cut flower farmer, I may look at it a little bit differently than a home gardener, right? So I do still use occasionally plug trays. Of course, our sunflower successions, which is one of the things that I give our success. Financially in the flower farming world, we would start 1,200 sunflowers a week for sunflowers don't fit into the small block. They would have to have a larger block. It is not feasible, economical, or effective to make 1,200 soil blocks a week, the larger ones to start sunflowers, and they don't really need it. They do really, really well in plug trays when you plant them timely. So I just wanted to say that I still do use plug trays on the occasion that it really makes sense. So, my urban setting is what launched me into the soil blocking method. And so for those folks that might not be familiar, soil blocking is the way that the Dutch and English have started seeds for decades before, I learned about it and before it ever came into this country. And it really led the way for me to be able to launch my flower farming career. And I know that many of you may be in the same situation that I'm in. I have no greenhouses. I have no hoop houses. I've been commercial farming now for 23, going on 24 years. And I'm in the middle of the city. It is not really possible with ordinances for me to have a greenhouse. So I really had to find another way. And y'all, I am just basically making lemonade out of lemons, right? And I really did feel very penalized back in the beginning of my career, actually for many years early on when I started growing, because I felt like I didn't have a greenhouse. I was in the middle of the city. I didn't have much land. I felt like all these things were against me. But in fact, part of this journey I'm going to share with you today, as I'm doing a little storytelling along with the benefits that I've learned to appreciate about soil blocking, is that much of my success is attributed to me overcoming these problems. And I am so grateful today that I don't have hoop and greenhouses. I mean, I'm in the middle of the city. I'll say that many times because people coming in and joining us, and people just assume that when they see the production that we have posted through the years, that I have a lot of house structures, and I really do have none. But I'm so grateful today, now that I'm kind of on the downside of my production years, meaning I have been hustling for over 2 decades. And now I am venturing into this more education. And I am so grateful in my small home setting that I don't have structures to look at or to deal with as we would be moving away from them. So that's just a little plug of encouragement for people. You can do it without houses. And soil blocking, seed starting, is a big part of my success story for doing that. So let's just start in the beginning, right? So back when I first started venturing, well, actually, even before I ventured into becoming a flower farmer, I was dabbling in gardening. And y'all, I was a dreadful seed starter. I could make a cartoon out of this. I had purchased so many seed starting kits, the plastic trays and domes and all different types, and they were like stacked in a closet. I just was never able to master successful seed starting with those for whatever reason. And then kind of soon after that, not long after I started dabbling in gardening, did I happen upon Lynn Basinski's book, The Flower Farmer. I mean, Lynn just really blazed the trail for all of us, right? So I came upon that book, The Flower Farmer, and I read it. And in Lynn's book, she recommended another book I can't remember what she basically recommended it for, except that for those people that wanted to learn how to farm more in depth. And that led me to Elliot Coleman's book, The New Organic Grower. Y'all, that book changed my life. I mean, I don't come from a farming family. My parents weren't even gardeners. So I really had not had any real experience. So Elliot's book really explained the way that a farming environment works. I mean, how you start, how you can do it, and just really the black and white science of how organics work and just common sense stuff. And he built that from years of experience of traveling all over the world and seeing how other people did, from people that didn't have all the stuff available to them like we do here in the United States. Anyway, when I got halfway through the book, I think it was, is when he started talking about seed starting with soil blocking, and light bulb after light bulb went off for me. First off, he gave clear instruction, first off, and really step-by-step black and white guidelines. And I literally followed his steps and went from this dreadful seed starter. I mean, let's talk about seed starting, right? How hurtful is it when you start seeds and they don't start? I mean, it's like you want to have how many tears have been shed over the frustration of all this, right? And anger and everything else. So when I followed his suggestions and went from this zero success to an overnight a success in my eyes. I still had just not even begun yet, right? But they sprouted. And that was just such a huge success. I can remember the happy dance that happened the morning I walked out after I had started. And it was snapdragons, believe it or not, that were my first attempt at seed starting. Because I had read in Lynn's book, they were a hardy annual, and I was starting in late summer. So I needed something that I could plant in the fall and winter over. That was the whole story of Cool Flowers, my book. That's where it kind of all started snowballing from there, right? So I can remember coming out and seeing those little seeds that had sprouted. Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't think I had tears of joy, but I was one happy girl. And so then it began to dawn on me that if I was going to really become a flower farmer, I needed to grow a lot of transplants. And that really took me to a new, to more problems. And I think I posted this morning on social media that when I first started farming, I felt like I had so many odds stacked against me, and seed starting was just one, but it was a big one, right? So I knew that I needed to grow a lot of transplants. And so you have to, paint this picture. So I live in the middle of the city. Literally totally surrounded by houses. Back then I only had 1.17 acres, and my bungalow house was on that. I had no work building. I had a carport, and I had a cellar, and I had a kitchen that had a bar on it, and a pantry. And that is literally where I started seed starting, with soil blocks. So when I was following along with Elliot's method, what was immediately apparent to me is that watering in my home in-house setting, meaning inside a building where water can't just run out the bottom, or you have to do something with the water, it was a huge pain. And when you have to water your transplants quickly before you go to work in the morning, back then I had a real job, right? It was a big problem. So that began my journey of tweaking soil blocking to what I call my indoor home setting, because literally I was starting seeds in my pantry. On my bar in my kitchen was where my heat mat was. And then I had a grow light. I evacuated a big, I have like a 8x6 pantry, walk-in pantry. I evacuated one of those shelves, put a grow light, and that's what was the beginning of my cycle. And then I moved to my cellar, which is truly a dungeon, y'all. It's a cellar. There's no windows, there's no light, there's no air, there's no nothing down there. So that really began my journey of, oh my gosh, how am I going to start more in a smaller space? Because the big challenge is that most people, and many people that soil block, start in the 2-inch block, most of their seeds. And I couldn't do that. I didn't have the space to do that. So I have all the numbers here, and I have bullets because I don't want to skip over any of my little facts that I thought of. And so I will get to all that. So my first challenge was to find a self-contained way to maintain soil blocks in a tray that has no drainage holes. So that was my first challenge. So that would really just liberate me, because that meant that wherever I could figure out to get a grow light, I could support and grow transplants in my house. Because back then I didn't really have another option. So that is when I started thinking and using flat bottom trays with no drainage holes. So that just was an overnight eye opener. It's like, bingo. Now I could put something on my dining room table if I wanted to, a spare bedroom. Now, 20 years in, I have seen people start seeds following this method in places, closets, on top of a clothes dryer. Let me lean this way. See that behind me? That is our tabletop grow light, the 24-inch. Under that little 24 inches long, 12-inch wide grow light, that is 240 transplants, which we're going to take a closer look at in just a minute here. You can do that anywhere. That's like the top of your clothes dryer, right? You could do that. So I just really went to work. I'd hate to say the word exploiting that, but I did. It's like I had to find out how to get the most. So that next big challenge was, all right, if you do them in trays where I can water efficiently, quickly, and easily without making a mess to have to worry about, how can I grow more in a smaller space? So that started me really examining how could I put more size seeds into that small block. I started looking at seeds. I'm dumping out seeds and looking at them. And first off, I discovered that the mass majority of the seeds that I was starting were pretty small. Even zinnias and marigolds, we start them in this size block, y'all, the 3/4 inch, which you'll see here in a minute. And almost everything else is tiny. So I began experimenting, starting all the seeds in the 3/4 inch block instead of the 2 inch block, because here is the math. So you remember the cafeteria trays that we grabbed when we were in school to get your food and go through the line? They're like 14 by 20 or so, something like that. On that size tray, you can fit 240 of the 3/4 inch blocks. If I'd have used the 2 inch block, which is the next size up that I had, I could only fit 36 on that same tray. I mean, it was like, okay, I have to figure out how to use that 3/4 inch block. And that's what I went to work. I just had to figure it out, right? And so what really started to happen for me, and y'all, I trashed so many seedlings figuring this out. I mean, I want to first off liberate anybody that has failures. A failure is just one more step closer to making success, y'all. I composted so many blocks back then. So what I soon learned is that block wouldn't just grow a transplant that I could get away with. Those boogers thrived in that 3/4 inch block. And you want to know what else I really learned? Is that I had a much higher rate of germination in that littler block than I did in the big block. Because, friends, it is easier to keep a little 3/4 inch soil block warmer and evenly moist than it is a bigger chunk of soil like a 2 inch block. So I'm just reading my notes here. And I will say it now, and I hope to remember to say it again. And my goal was to not have to bump up from the 3/4 inch to the 2 inch, which is kind of the standard that people in Europe. We are really good friends with the manufacturers of soil blocks, and they actually sell my book, Vegetables Love Flowers, now, to help people understand that there's a different way to use soil blocks. So what I was doing was so backward to the way it had been done for years to come. I had to do it out of necessity. If I couldn't figure it out, I wasn't going to be a flower farmer in my eyes. You know, that's really what all happened. So my was to start all the seeds that I could in the 3/4 inch block and to grow it and sustain it in that 3/4 inch block until it could be planted, just like what you are looking at right there. I mean, some of those plants, some of their sisters and brothers have already been planted out in the garden. They're ready to go to the garden, and they're in 3/4 inch blocks. So what is the real secret of being able to do that? Is timing. Timing is really the secret in any seed starting, but it is essential for soil blocking. Don't start too early. So one of the benefits of soil blocking is that they tend to grow faster indoors as transplants than other methods. So in addition to them growing faster naturally because they're in such a healthy environment, I found that you can actually plant them and handle them much earlier in the process, which meant you could plant a 2 to 3 week old zinnia, which is this big in a soil block, and get it out in the garden. So it's really all about timing. And what I have learned through the years, particularly now with the crazy weather patterns just being so unpredictable, is I almost always veer onto the side of starting later than earlier. I would much rather be tapping my toe, waiting for a seedling to get a little bit bigger and have the space ready to go out in the garden that is ready to receive it the minute it's ready, than for me to start earlier and to have beautiful seedlings that will quickly grow into these stretched out, yellowy, tall, gangly seedlings that are too big. They're growing. I mean, they need to be moved out of that block in some fashion. And there's just not a way for me to do that. So my whole system has been built around starting on a timely fashion so that I can start them in the small block. And that small block is actually what we take to the garden. So now I'm just going to share some of the benefits that I have learned to love. I knew some of them because that's how I'd been introduced to me, and I've got some of my own that I'm adding in here. Perhaps the most prevalent that I really, truly appreciate is, again, I'll say, because you can handle the blocks so much earlier. So think about this. Sorry, y'all, my nose is really itching. I've had allergies have really started up in the last couple of days. Because you can handle them so much earlier in the process. In addition, because they have such high germination, you only put one seed per block, so there's no thinning. They grow quicker, and you can handle them earlier. All of this gets a healthier, quicker moving transplant out into the garden, and they just literally hit the ground running. There's no transplant shock. There's no recovery time. They just really, and I will say that, I mean, I hear from you every day. Our inbox is loaded. I get DMs and all over social media. Y'all, it takes time and practice to figure this out for your growing conditions, how fast you grow a transplant. I attribute this whole soil blocking thing also to our huge success with celosias. Celosias are a huge cash crop for us, and they have been for 20 years. That is coxcomb and the plumes. Both of them are in our top 10 producers. And celosias, if you don't know it or not, really resent being pot bound or transplant, or they don't recover from transplant shock very well. And soil blocking they just thrive. And if you look at images of our farm on social media, you see that we just grow tons of it. And it's because of our great success in starting and transplanting it, which leads to superior crops in the long run. And so I mentioned earlier the high rate of germination. So I do have one here I want to just actually show you. This is straw flowers. So today, what is today? Today is, I believe, the 25th. So these were started on the 17th. This is straw flowers. And you can see that there's a couple of little empty blocks. Y'all, back there you go, right there. There's a couple. Sometimes you'll look at the blocks and say, why in the world did that one not sprout? And you want to find what we find to be the truth most often when you have the occasional empty block on a tray that has excellent germination. It's the seed sower. They literally skipped a block. I call that the chatty problem. Usually it's when the person sowing the seed gets to chit-chatting a little bit. But we find that germination with seeds is much higher with soil blocks than with other methods. And it's the great growing environment, as well as, again, it's the fact that it's easier to keep a small block evenly warm and moist to actually push that process along. And it's these ideal conditions. So I already showed you the grow light behind me, and we're going to look at that in just a moment a little closer. But you can grow the 240 blocks on that tray versus 36 of the 2-inch blocks was like a no-brainer to me. It was like I went to work to find every single way that I could to actually make this work. And then the other thing was, a lot of people face challenges that are like me, that don't have a greenhouse or a hoop house, don't have a lot of space in their home. I'll say again, I live in a bungalow, y'all, small 2-bedroom bungalow. And there's not a lot of free space to actually do this. So it just opens up opportunities to me, and I know it will for other people. And this fast growing while in the transplant stage, if your air temperature is warm enough, meaning don't be doing this in a cold garage, y'all, these transplants just grow so blooming quickly. And I will say again, because this is another common issue that people ask us about. Yes, you really only put one seed per block. That's all that we do. So the block and mix that you use for soil blocks is actually the complete opposite of what the traditional seed starting mix is. It is so seed starting mix that's made to go in containers, whether that's a cell pack or whatever it is you're starting seeds in, is made to be light and fluffy so that air and water can freely flow through it. Well, that's not what you want for soil blocks. You want it to be very dense. And so it's basically a compost peat moss or cocoa fiber, either one of those, and some nutrients. You can find the recipe on our website under resources, all things soil blocking, and we have the ready-made mix. And it is not sterile. We don't want anything sterile. And we attribute to our healthy growing of our transplants to the blocking mix being a big part of that. And I will say that the biggest learning curve, especially to people that have been using another traditional type of seed starting method that are really kind of in their groove of doing that, the watering is undoubtedly the biggest learning curve because it is just so very, very different. But I am just here to tell you that once you figure out the process for your setup, whether it's in a home or in a work building like I am. I mean, this is for home gardeners and for commercial growers. Once you are equipped, all you do is add more blocking mix and seeds each year. The trays, we use trays of all different sizes and makes. You use them forever. And excuse me, they really, you just use your equipment over and over. So the only time I didn't really mention the 2-inch block, except to say that it takes a lot of space, which it does. The 2-inch block not only takes a lot of space, but it takes a lot more blocking mix. However, there are times you just have to use it. Excuse me. I definitely start sweet peas in the 2-inch block. They grow beautiful transplants. Pretty much the times that we do plant up from the 3/4-inch block to the 2-inch block is for tomato and eggplant and pepper transplants. Oh my goodness, y'all. You have never seen such gorgeous roots and gorgeous, healthy transplants. For those plants like that you want a bigger plant to go to the garden. So there is a use for the 2-inch. Again, y'all, there is no one rule to apply to everything, right? You have to be really flexible. And I do definitely attribute my great success, not only in business, but kind of in life, is just try to have open mind and not just have one way. You know, we use plug trays. We use soil blocks the most. We use the small blocker most, but I do use the 2-inch blocker. And so it's talking about opening up doors. The discovery and the pursuit of finding these successful steps has allowed me to not only launch my cut flower farm and business, which has been like a huge part of my life for the last 20 years, but it has to develop this revolutionary opportunity for people that are in the same situation like me that don't have greenhouses. Either they can't, or they don't want to, or they just don't have that as an option to have an easy seed starting method, right? And it took a lot of failures and a lot of ups and downs to get here, but it's just like with everything else in life, you know. It's like once you get it, right? So friends, if you want to learn more about soil blocking, head over to thegardenersworkshop.com. Lots of tutorials, resources, online courses, all the seed starting equipment you need, whether you are doing it right here up close. And I'm just going to bring some of these trays over here for us to look at some of these up close. So first, I have some in front of me that I'm willing to sacrifice, y'all. So this is some stock, and this stock is 4 weeks old. Y'all, I'm having trouble. The camera's backwards. Look at those little roots. And these have not been watered yet this morning. So I thought I would, and see, here's one that didn't get germinated, but we're just going to break this off. I'm dropping dirt all over my computer. That's okay, right? I'm just going to and show you the amazing little roots of these guys. Can you see that? And so these are, like 3 weeks old. Now, over here, so you see that, first off, you can manhandle the soil blocks a whole lot. Literally, we put like this cluster would be laid on my hand out in the garden, and notice I just dropped that, and it did not even fall apart. So that's an extra little block. Let's get rid of that. Let's hold this one up. So look at that amazing little transplant. You know, when you plant that out in the garden, they literally hit the ground running. So let's look at some of these others. I'll bring them up here. Actually, I'll just stand up here. So this is Craspedia. This is another great example of you being able to see the great, sorry y'all, everything's backwards. And you know I'm dyslexic, so this is like tough. You can see the high germination and just how healthy these guys are. These were started January 29th. So today, as we mentioned, I think is the 25th. So they're like, what, 4 weeks old. They're on the verge of getting ready to go out. And each of these little trays has 60 plants on it. These are straw flowers that all of their brothers and sisters have already been planted out in the garden. This is the small block, y'all. Look at those roots. Pretty dadgum amazing. Then here is, I'm not sure if we started these here together. This is the stock experiment where I put 2 to 3 seeds in each block. These are from January 29th. These guys are just about ready to go to the garden. And each one of these blocks has 2 to 3 plants growing in it. It is pretty fascinatingly amazing, right? And then here's one more. This is stock apricot. And these guys are January 29th, and they're just about ready to go to the garden. And so this little tabletop, I mean, especially if you're a home gardener, right? I mean, not many of us need 240 plants. So it just really makes for a super space savvy, healthy transplant that you don't have to store and rummage through. The black, I mean, I have them. I mean, I still do plug trays. We get a couple years out of plug trays. But what I'll tell you, the tray that we do our seed soil blocking mix in is once the blocking mix dries, when we're done with soil blocking, whether it's for that day, that week, or for the next month, we just put all of our equipment in there and stow it underneath the shelf. It's pretty self-contained. So friends, I just really appreciate y'all letting me kind of walk down memory lane today of kind of how I came to be a soil blocker. I do not think I would be here today as a flower farmer if I hadn't found a way to be a successful, high volume seed starter in a super small space for what I do. So friends, head on over to thegardenersworkshop.com if you want to learn more. Till we meet again. Ciao.